Hello and welcome back to ShameOver. So glad that you are here tuning in, whether you are doing it virtually or audibly or whatever it is. So glad you're here. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Today we are going to be focusing on food and alcohol and the interrelationship between the two. So often I am seeing my clients when they're really working on the alcohol thing, all of a sudden they notice they're eating more, or maybe they're instead of drinking, they're spending more time on social media, or they're starting to shop more, spend more time on Amazon, all these different things. There are so many different reasons for that, but I hear this all the time. So if that is you, please know you are not alone at all in this. It is very normal, especially as we're getting into these things. Why? Because we have some habit that we're trying to change. We have something that we've been trying to make ourselves feel better or help us avoid feeling certain things. And that's why we're drinking. If we're not drinking, we're going to be doing the same thing, only with food, with social media, with spending, with sex, with so many different things. I've touched on this a little bit before, but today we're really going to dive into it more because I hear this come up literally every single week. If you've not read it, if you've not heard of it, please check out Christy Harrison. I believe it's Christy Harrison. Yes. Christy Harrison's book, The Anti-Diet. It was life-changing for me. I think every woman in the world should be reading this book, but anyone who has ever dealt with diet culture, who has ever dealt with the all or nothing black or white mentality, which is why I know a lot of you guys are attracted here because that's a big thing. So I love this book, not only for what it does, how it looks at food, but you can translate it all to your consumption with alcohol as well, and pretty much consumption in general. I feel like everything that you're trying to work on when it comes to your alcohol consumption can be used in pretty much all areas of your life. So again, The Anti-Diet by Christy Harrison. Christy Harrison is a journalist, a registered dietitian. She writes for the best-selling Substack newsletter, Rethinking Wellness. She hosts, it looks like, 2 different podcasts, and she just has an extensive background in food, nutrition, health. She helps people really examine their diet and how they deal with wellness culture altogether so that they can develop healthier relationships with food. So essentially what she's been doing for years and years and years, and she is just wonderful at, I am doing when it comes to alcohol. But again, in my mind, so much of this is transferable. You can translate it to any form of consumption that you're trying to work on. So in this book, it really dives into understanding what overconsumption is. So I think when it comes to food, when it comes to alcohol, a lot of times we kind of know if we ate too much, we don't feel good. We feel sluggish. Our stomach hurts. We feel just ugh. With alcohol, same thing. Maybe we're blacking out. Maybe we're saying things that we regret, or not remembering what we said or did, or waking up in the morning to see these purchases that we completely forgot about, or until Amazon winds up on the doorstep, we're like, oh shit, didn't remember that. So all these different things can be forms of overconsumption. Social media, in my mind, all of us are consuming pretty much daily when it comes to social media, or at least technology in general. We're in front of technology all day long. We get off of our computer, and what do? We go to our phone, we go in front of the TV and watch some Netflix or something like that. We are constantly being inundated with stuff. So we wonder why we're so anxious and why there's so much coming at us. We need to take a break from that. So all of us can work on our consumption on all levels, myself included, absolutely. So as we know, when we have overconsumption, regardless of what it is, it impacts our health. It impacts us mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. It's not good. So obviously, when it comes to food, to alcohol, a lot of these are very similar, especially when we realize that we're engaging in these behaviors, typically because we're stressed. We're trying to cope with something, so dealing with our emotions, there's social pressures, there are so many different things, right? So Another thing that really plays a role is diet culture and restriction. A lot of you might be drawn to me and ShameOver and why we're here because it is complete opposite of the black or white, all or nothing mentality. The reason why ShameOver came out, or why I started it, I should say, is I wanted to drink less. As soon as I went online, just basically asked like, how can I drink less? Everything that I found was basically like, if you're searching for this, then you probably should just stop drinking. You're probably an alcoholic. And I'm like, one, no, I'm not. Two, I don't think that's necessary. Three, not interested. I had tried nearly every diet throughout, we'll say, literally my first diet was in second grade, I think. Just secretly, parents didn't know about it. I just did. But anyway, all of these diets were all about, yes, you can do this. No, you cannot do this. What did I do when, diet starts Monday? Okay, so we're going to binge up until Monday because never going to eat it again, right? When you have that mentality, it is very hard. Almost all of us do not do well with the all or nothing mentality. So we're going to binge leading up to it. We're going to be super strict when we're on it. And then the second that we fall off, it is the all or nothing again. Well, shit, I wasn't going to drink today. I did. So might as well finish the bottle of wine rather than just have that glass because I already drank, right? So who cares how much it is? Is this relatable for any of you? I know it was for me with food, with drinking. If I'm working on my drinking, I saw it come quickly in with the food. If I'm very, very specific with what I'm eating, I see it come in other areas. Maybe it's in social media usage. Maybe it's in my spending. It all comes out in different areas because one, that's how we've trained ourselves, how we've been conditioned, but also how we've wired our brains to deal with feelings and emotions that we don't want to deal with, that we don't know how to deal with, any of those things. So with the culture that we live in, so the book talks a lot about diet culture. I mean, I had heard of diets my whole life growing up, especially at a very young age. I mean, for me to remember my first diet was, I said second grade. I think it actually was third grade because of where I remember it being. Anyway, when we have these memories, that shows how ingrained and how powerful it was that, 30 plus years ago, I remember. I don't have very many memories from like last week, but I remember something that happened over 30 years ago. Like, come on. So that just shows it's a core memory that's there for a reason that played that much value or impact on me for it to register. This is very common. It is when it comes to our body issues. A lot of times when we see someone who in our mind is very overweight, we make assumptions like, oh, they have no self-control or willpower, la, 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 la. That's not necessarily the case at all. And the book really dives into that. And that's why I encourage everyone to read it or listen to it. I prefer the audiobook personally, but diet culture and alcohol goes in there so much. It has created all these beliefs in us that, for example, thinness, being thin, it shows that you're healthy. It shows that you're a better person in a sense, that you have better self-control, better willpower. We have the idea that weight loss means that you've achieved a higher status, or you can discriminate against people who don't meet the so-called ideal body type. And my whole life, I was never a stick figure at all. So up until Scarlett Johansson was probably the first one that I'm like, oh my gosh, she has curves. Pretty sure she's like a size 2, maybe 0, who knows. But the fact that that is what was seen as curves, like kind of ridiculous. And then we had the Kardashian effect. Not even going to get started on that, but I can say I do at least appreciate that they made curves sexy and beautiful and appreciated and valued. The thing is, just because that's valued doesn't mean that if you don't have any curves at all, you're not valued either. I was with someone this past weekend who she has always been crazy skinny, just literally bipolar body type for me. And we were talking about how when she was growing up, she would have loved to have a little bit more meat on her bones. And like, at the time, she did not at all. Or if so, she definitely didn't say that. And here I was wishing that I could look like her because it was never in the cards for me. And it's so interesting how she wanted something that in her mind she couldn't have and vice versa. But it was all based on what the culture was. She's 7, 8 years younger than me. So when she was growing up, it was starting to be more acceptable to not be a size 0, where when I was growing up, if you were not a size 0, like, sorry. I remember literally being at frat houses and having guys like look me up and down and then walk off. Like, I was disgusting. Mind you, I was not skinny. I was not massive. But the thing is, at the end of the day, who fucking cares? It shouldn't matter. Like, just that was the culture, that was the mindset that everyone had, that my worth as an individual was how I physically looked. It's kind of not only insulting, but kind of disgusting as, humanity in a sense. But this book really, really dives into just how we see each other, how we see ourselves. What's crazy is diet culture throughout history has been very different. Way back when, the heavier you were meant that you actually were well off. You could afford to have all the food and not have to, they didn't really work out back then, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, it was very important to be curvy and voluptuous until it wasn't, right? So there's always a pendulum shift with this, but it has evolved, it will continue to evolve, and it's always going to be influenced by media, by fashion, by the diet industry. And when we have social media like we do today, to where literally all day long you are being spoon-fed messages, we are always going to have body issues. One thing that I love that Harrison really checks in on for this is the unrealistic standards that have been created, and that the body dysmorphia or the dissatisfaction that we have is just insane. I saw a research study recently about, it was literally middle school girls, and how unsatisfied they were with their body because they didn't look like Kylie Kardashian. What? You're 11, may or may not have even gone through puberty yet, and like, what? The filters that we use, they want to look like that all the time. Nobody does. I mean, my whole life growing up, we were seeing constantly the magazine images, and this is what you're supposed to look like, and no one ever did. But it wasn't until Jamie Lee Curtis and some other actresses came out and said, like, that's not how I look in real life. And then some of them finally said, I'm not letting you Photoshop me, because people need to know how we look in real life. So again, this is not a bash session. Sorry if it's turning into that a little bit. I don't mean it to, but it is just, what I really want to do is highlight how diet culture has been influencing the way that we consume food, but also alcohol. So with food, we see things as good or bad, which leads us to make choices on, oh, I'm going to have this salad because I'm being good. Sure, this is not news to you, but there have been so many studies that will actually say that salad has more calories than that hamburger. So what's actually the better choice, right? So just having these good or bad perspectives are not necessarily accurate or correct. And again, can be very unrealistic in how we see ourselves, decisions that we make, the actual nutritional benefits that we get from it, so many different things. Same thing when it comes to alcohol. I hear constantly, oh, I'm being good. Oh, I was bad yesterday. No. Anytime my clients use that terminology, I call them out on it. Absolutely not. We're not using that this is good, this is bad. When you see alcohol as this is bad or this is my reward, it's always going to have power over you, right? We need to change it to, instead of it being bad, this is something that I want to it's a perfect accessory. There you go. Or a condiment that you put on your meal, right? So it's not the entire thing. It does not determine if you succeeded or failed. It does not determine if you're good or bad. That is not it at all. As you start being on this journey, you're likely very well aware of it, but keep in mind how much you're going to see in the media and marketing materials, just the reinforcement of diet culture, of all these different things by the body types that you see, the restrictive diets that you're constantly hearing about, or, even the low calorie alcohol options can be kind of a big thing to look at. The reason why I am a fan of the low calorie alcohol options is when they're low calorie, they are lower alcohol content. But you need to understand that does not mean that they obviously have a nutritional value or they're better than X, Y, and Z type thing. On that note, though, when it comes to, we'll say, dealcoholized wine, you can have some great dealcoholized wine that's awesome. You can have non-alcoholic wine that is literally juice, and the sugar, the calories, all of that is up. So just because it's non-alcoholic wine does not necessarily mean it's good or better or healthier for you. So again, things are marketed in such ways to get you to buy them, and that's what works. It sells. But you need to do your homework. You need to actually understand what this means. So why this is such a big issue, and I think why you're probably here, why I have been dealing with this as well, is when we have a restriction, it encourages us to binge, whether it's with food, whether it's with alcohol, whether it's with anything else. We are likely going to binge because we are in that cycle of restriction. And as soon as we know that we can't have something, it's like Adam and Eve. There's a reason why she took the apple. Had they never said you can't have it, never would have taken the apple. Well, someone probably would have, but you know what I'm trying to say. So start understanding as you're going through these phases, how is it hitting you? Is it triggering you? What does that look like? Restriction, yes, we want to be able to restrict so that we're not, if you have a cake in front of you, you can easily have a slice or maybe a couple bites. You're not indulging in the whole thing. When you have a glass of wine or a bottle of wine in front of you, you can have a glass. You don't have to drink the whole thing, right? So we want restriction on that note, but not seeing it as the black or white, all or nothing. Like I said earlier, very easily, yesterday, perfect example. I decided my husband had some bubbles. We love sharing bubbles. Decided to have a glass of bubbles with him. Because I had drank, because I was not going to be able to put a marble in my piggy bank, for those who know what that means. If not, go check that episode out. It's a really good one. I could have very easily been like, fuck it, let's just go ahead and drink the whole bottle, right? But deep down, I knew I didn't want that, just because I was off and knew that, okay, well, today's a drinking day, so might as well go all in. I had to check in with myself and know, no, that's not what I want. I want to listen to my body. I want to check in, and I only want this one glass or this glass and a half, and that's fine. And when you lose that restriction mentality, you enjoy things so much more, but you don't feel the need to over consume. And that is literally what this is all about. So when it comes to restriction, there is a natural biological and psychological response that we have to binge, because way back when, if we knew we might not know where our next meal is coming from, we needed to eat everything we could. We needed to drink everything we could. We needed to consume as much as we could because we weren't sure where our next meal was coming from, right? So we still have that in us. It's in our DNA. It's in our cells. When we have that restriction, our body automatically is essentially fight or flight, to where I need more of this to be able to survive. That is why we do the behavior that we do, which typically leaves us feeling deprived, leaves us feeling like we have no control, or makes us shame spiral. Hello, yes. Makes us feel horribly about ourselves, or that we have no willpower, makes us feel like shit, that we're worthless, right? That is why we have to break the cycle of this black or white, all or nothing thinking. If you get the book, again, it will go into strategies of how you can really adopt this process to break that cycle. But all of it essentially comes down to intuitive consumption. So when we are drinking intuitively, when we are eating intuitively, we are not only slowing down, we are focusing on listening to our body, the signals that it's giving us, checking in with our brain, checking in mentally, physically, emotionally. How am I feeling? We're automatically rejecting that diet mentality or the all or nothing mentality. And that it helps us, again, to enjoy it without feeling the need to overconsume. It is so incredibly powerful. And I want you guys so much to go read this book because I know that it will be incredibly powerful for you for any factors that you're looking at changing when it comes to consumption. So I'm going to stop there for today, but I will be back with part 2 that's going to really dig into emotional eating and drinking strategies. So you actually have some takeaway items that can help you know what to do to manage your intake with food, with alcohol, with social media, with whatever it is that you're looking at doing. So you'll be able to walk away with some practical tips and different things that you can start practicing today to be able to move forward. So can't wait for part 2. We'll see you soon. And until then, please reach out if there's anything I can do to help. That's exactly what I'm here for. If you like this, please like it, subscribe, share. That's the only way that I can grow, that I can help get this message out there. But more than anything, I just want to thank you for showing up for yourself, for being here, for devoting this time to learning about yourself and really digging into the evolution of you. And that is a beautiful thing. So with that, I will say goodbye. Love to all, and we'll see you soon.